try and get one this week.
Good morning. Good morning. It's another beautiful Friday, and we're now in December, Warren. It's crazy to think that it's the last month of the year, but hey, we're here. So hope you are having a wonderful week, and you're looking forward to a beautiful and amazing weekend. Hopefully it's not going to be snowy like some of us up here in Cleveland, but it is what it is. So if you're a business owner and maybe you're an aspiring business owner and you're just looking for some good educational content, lessons learned, or some insights on some things that we've helped our clients with, you're in the right place. The Business Unscripted podcast, we're here to give you that advice, talk through some of our experiences, some of our failures as well. We all have failures. That's going to happen. But you're in the right spot. Exactly. And so go ahead. Let's grab your favorite cup of Joe, and let's jump into the show this week. Dwarn, sir, how are you?
Well, good morning to you, Dave. It is certainly not a snow problem here in the Philippines. I can assure you that.
No, you never have snow over there.
No, we are entering monsoon season, I believe, or at least it feels like that with all the rain that keeps coming in the evenings. So that was the reason why I couldn't make it last week, actually. I did tune in and watch the show, all 2 hours of it. My gosh. Yeah. It was rather interesting because when I went to go to my office, which is at the back of my house, there was about 4 inches of water between my back door and the office door. So I decided, you know what? I just don't feel like swimming to the office today. So,
that's probably a smart way to do it. You don't want to come in wet, and then you're around electrical equipment and all that fun stuff. So you don't want to electrocute.
Well, even just being under an air conditioner, which is a fairly normal thing here in the Philippines, while you're drenched, doesn't lead to very good outcomes.
Yeah. So I'm glad you stayed dry. But it was a fun show last week for me. Obviously low passion, because I just feel like especially business owners that are newer or that are desperate, right? You don't necessarily always think through all the nuances, right, of your solution, and you see these quick solutions that they give you, right? Oh, we're going to fund you in 24 hours. I get it, like it's there, but you got to understand all the angles. And as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, you have to at least understand, and then you can make your informed decision. Like, if you still decide at that point that it's important for you to kind of move forward, then it is what it is. But at least each angle and each piece of information to make that decision. And I don't feel like a lot of people understand, right? And the wording, the language they're trying to hide behind these, well, it's not interest, right? It's just
terminology that just don't make bloody sense, right? That was my biggest takeaway, is that they're hiding behind marketing terminology. And there's an interesting point you just made there, right? They're preying on the desperation and the quick turnarounds.
Yes.
Now, 24-hour turnarounds or same-day turnaround loans, we all know that typically translates to high interest. It happens quick because there's a high interest, or there's a cost for the administration to set up the loan initially, which is quite high, and has to come off the principal. One thing I also find is if you're buying a car and it's a same-day turnaround, that's a bit scary in itself for some people because that's a big purchase. But where you see this a lot is in the appliance industry, where people walk in and it's like they can buy a computer same day with finance, or they can buy a TV and walk out with an 80-inch TV the same day in finance, and then they're paying this thing off interest-free for the next 12 months without reading the terms and conditions. And that sort of stuff's impulse purchasing. In business, we shouldn't be making impulse purchases. We shouldn't be making impulse decisions on finance. So I appreciated your passion. I certainly felt the passion at certain times during the episode, and I was sitting there and having a good old chuckle at points, and then shaking my head when I felt like there was some talking in circles.
I'll say this too, like just to kind of hit that point real quick. Like if I possibly right offended anybody because of my passion, I certainly like that wasn't my intention, right? The intention is to get the point across so that business owners understand it. And if I did, I apologize for that. But I don't think I did. I haven't heard from anybody that's watched it that I have offended anybody. But if there's somebody out there that was not my intention. And if you missed last week's, like go and watch it. It's as Doran said, it's about 2 hours long. Watch it in 2x speed. Definitely. I for whatever reason I think I sound better in 2x speed than I do normal, but that's just personal preference. But go watch it. It's on. We had her name was Katie, and she's in the alternative funding space, and these BCAs, these MCAs that they're pushing to business owners now. It's an exploding market because of the fact that like nobody understands it, and it's probably still too nuanced in order to put some full regulations that are protecting, right?
I was going to say, what's the regulations around it? Because I mean, are they considered credit or financial institutions?
They're supposed to be. And see, this is where like I've never gone through the process, right, of giving one or getting one. So, and I have clients that have had them in the past before, right, that they came to me and we were able to kind of talk through some different things. But in looking through the documents, it's not like a typical loan. You know what I mean? And so, and this is where they're like, well, see, they're going to take that. They're going to say, see, you just admitted it's not a typical loan, so it's not interest. No, that's the terminology.
It's terminology, right? It's
right.
like
a
tomato is not a vegetable; it's a fruit.
Right. And so with the loan in the U.S., right, you have to have your what we call the truth in lending document, right, which shows this is the amount you're financing, this is how much it's going to cost you, this is the total of the payments, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen it. Now, this is not me saying this is true across the board. This is just my experience from what I've seen from people that have gotten these types of loans. They don't give you that truth in lending document. They just give you a full small print document that just details all their legalese, right, wording. Nowhere in there does it give you an interest rate. Nowhere in there does it say, hey, this is your actual cost.
Well, to be fair, I believe at the end of the podcast, when you were with Katie last week, there was a conversation about potentially getting some of her clients to provide a document for review for you on their, approval, of course. And she was going to look into providing that. So you could potentially find out if that is the case in the options that she offers, at least.
Yes. And so, yeah. And so we'll see, the idea is to bring her back on, right? Obviously, I think it's one that has garnered a lot of interest from the audience in terms of, kind of going back and forth and learning. So I think it's going to be important to either bring her back on or bring other people in the industry. I did invite, her underwriter, if that's something that, she wants to do. She wants to bring her underwriter on. She's more than happy to do that, to truly kind of walk through and explain, why that specific underwriter is going to feel like it's a red flag. There was also a gentleman that I was going back and forth with. His name's Trey on LinkedIn, because he had mentioned some like merchant processing, how, right, having the accounts isn't like a red flag. They just have to ask more questions, right? And once those questions are answered by the business owner of what they're doing, it's never caused them to be denied, in on the merchant processing side as well. Because their concern on the merchant processing side is that, if you have one income account and then you move everything out of it, well, what happens if somebody, requests a refund, right? Or you have to, pay back something. And, if that's the case, typically a lot of banks will put it through. And then a business owner, if they see that, right, it goes to the operating, they just transfer back out of the operating account. Or you set up your operating account as your overdraft protection, right? So when the income account goes negative, it just pulls from your operating, or your vault account if you have a vault account set up. So there's definitely ways to set it up correctly. Again, the book, right, Profit First by Mike Michalowicz, it's written generalistically, right, because it's to the masses. So therefore, you can't get into the nitty gritty, the specific business owner examples that you would like in a book. You have to give it that, when 1 million people are going to be reading a book, you have to simplify the system, the workflow, etc. And so therefore, when somebody needs that specific system set up, that's where like a profit first professional or customizing it for yourself in a way that works is actually how the system is fully implemented in businesses long term. So,
and let's be clear, like with one thing, and you mentioned on that podcast last week as well, was I'm not a financial expert by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just a businessman, and give me something marketing related, and I'll probably knock it out of the park. But my understanding of what the profit first system is it's a cash management overlay, not a replacement for traditional accounting and tax compliance.
correct.
So it's a complementary option to add into what you're doing, and it just makes managing it on the front end a lot easier for most business owners who are, especially for those who are time poor, because it's really, really simplified. It's like looking at bar graphs on marketing reports that say this is how many people actually saw your ad, this is how many people clicked on your ad, and this is how many people actually stayed around and did something after the fact. We just want the metrics. So you want quick metrics and easy to see, then the Profit First gives you that quick overview very, very quickly on your business. And I think it's like anything. If you're not involved in it and you haven't implemented it yourself and you haven't done the, due diligence on it, you may not understand all the different aspects of it. And there probably is some people out there who have dabbed their toes in it, calling themselves experts in the trade, yet haven't done the certification like you have, and are out there who are potentially saying, oh, just go and set up these 5 bank accounts and move money around to hide it. And if they're telling people to do that, then they don't understand the system.
Right.
And that's pretty much the same with any system. It's people out there trying to teach you bookkeeping who don't understand bookkeeping, then they might not be getting you the benefits that you need for your tax compliance.
And that's why it's so important to understand who you're working with, right? And vet them out, right? And make sure that what they're telling you is correct. And we talked about that on the episode, was that there are obviously bad actors in every industry, but you can't fault the system or the actual methodology that you say, well, then the system's bad, or as Katie said, the tool's bad. That's like saying somebody who does incorrect accounting, well, then, GAAP is bad because there's a bad actor that, didn't do, GAAP compliance right in my accounting and my books. Well, that's not the GAAP system. That's not the methodology around accounting. That's the person that you worked with. And again, if you try to do it yourself and you misunderstand the system without fully trying to understand it, is that truly profit first area and issue, or is it kind of your own because you didn't dive deeper? And I'm the first to admit, I've said this on previous episodes too, Dwarren, like when I initially read the book, I went to implement it in my business when I first went full time. And my stumbling block was I didn't take like the profit and the tax and set it aside in a separate bank, for that pressure, right? You see it there. Because what would happen then in your operating account, maybe you have this expense that you want to pay, and it's something that's going to implement your business, but you don't necessarily have it in your operating right now because you're waiting on invoices to be paid or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So the urge and the temptation when your profit in your tax account is sitting right there in your main bank is to just say, well, let me borrow it, right? I'll borrow it from the tax account. I'll buy and I'll register for the platform. And then when I get my next payment, I'll deposit it back and I'll refund my tax. And then we all know what happens, right? 3 weeks down the road, something else happens. And then you fumble, and then 2 months down the road, it's like, okay, I'm just going to keep going back. And I still did like minor, right, profit first. Like I still had like 3 bank accounts and things like that. But I kind of fell off the system. And that's because I tried to do it myself. I didn't go through the certification at this point. And most business owners fall off like that. They typically fall off if they try to do it themselves in about 6 months. I would say 90% of people there, 80 to 90%, just because it's human nature.
It happens in business.
It's human nature.
It happens. It's human nature. And like having someone just hold you accountable and just question you can be a big difference. right? I mean, we see it all the time when we go on weight loss journeys. We see it when we're trying to, eat better for different, reasons in our health. Sometimes you have to be held accountable by somebody, and that's just normal. Like if we look at like a lot of businesses, like trades industries, for example, you're out there and you're relying on your tools to be able to do your job. Well, if your tools break, that's an expense you probably didn't expect. So you might need to pull the money out of somewhere. If you don't have a system in place, whether it's profit first or something else that works for you, you might have to go and pull it out of an account and then wait for that next couple of jobs to come through. And then you might find yourself getting short and having to pay penalties on loan repayment or tax that was due because you've just gone and messed up your entire finance.
Well, and this is the part where you can get kind of customized with the system, and it's not mentioned in the book, is for like those examples that you just gave. And I have a client in this same situation. They have a lot of maintenance on trucks. They're junk haulers, right? So they have bins, they have trucks and it's the maintenance of these things that they happen all the time.
Yeah.
The first thing you should be doing, if that's you, or you have anything like that, or you have equipment that you want to replace every 3 years, or computers you need to be replaced because you have employees, what should happen is every deposit should then have some percentage allocated towards your maintenance account. And so then when you are ready to do a repair or an unexpected repair comes up, it's there. And it's not having to struggle of like, oh God, where do I pull it from? Because you've allocated all the money everywhere else. You have to be, and you have to have intention when you think through these projects. And that's why customizing it is the best way, right? And working with a profit first professional or somebody, I'm always going to advocate to work for profit first professionals because we understand the system fully. We can help you customize it. We can help you not only like set up the system, but the idea is that it goes deeper in your business, right? You talk about what are your goals, your 90-day goals, your 1-year goal, your 3-year goal. And then you create your profit first system and your account flow based on reaching those goals in those timeframes.
Yeah.
And so
you add to that, right? I mean, because in business, when you find yourself in a situation where you haven't budgeted for that, what do? You scramble, you look for a quick solution. That's when you start looking at these short-term, payouts. You start looking at alternative funding methods because it just seems like the quick fix to take care of the problem. And look, I think there was something mentioned by Katie on the podcast there where she was saying some of her clients will have a guaranteed money coming in a few weeks later or a month later, and they'll get these and then they'll just quickly pay it back so they don't have too much of a problem with it. However that worked. I'm not sure of the full details on that, but I was listening in and heard that. But that's a dangerous game to play because, like you said before, some other things might come up. If say you're doing lawns and landscaping work, right? You've got a ride-on lawnmower that just dies. It goes into the shop and you have to wait 6 weeks for a part. Is that 6 weeks you're not going to get work? No. You're going to go out and get a replacement unit, or you're going to lease a unit to use at whatever cost that is while you wait for that part to come in. And then while that's happening, maybe you need to replace one of your push mowers as well. Maybe your axle breaks on your trailer. Suddenly you're up a paddle without a creek. You're up a creek without a paddle, right? Yep. So having that little bit of foresight to do that sort of thing. Many, many, many moons ago, I remember sitting there talking. There was a big boom in Australia where the government had subsidies for water tanks. And what happened was there was a whole pile of these small business owners who decided to start working with these cheap manufacturers who were knocking these tanks up and selling cheap tanks and cashing in because it was like a 2-day installation for this water tank. And they'd make a bunch of cash and they were really happy. So overnight entrepreneurs, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them in different regions, and they were getting their rebates. One of them I was talking to, he had a really, really ripper year. Got all the way up to December. No sales in December. No one was spending money on a tank for December for Christmas. They were going away for vacation. They didn't want an installation done. Come January, nobody had the money. They'd spend it all at Christmas time, even with the rebates. So he went 2 months, got to the third month, shut the business down, couldn't run it because he had nothing left in the reserve tank. And this sort of system gives you the ability to plan for something like that, forecast for something like that. But still, if you're trying to do it yourself, you may not see those things. You may not see the opportunity. So working with someone like you, who's a professional in the system, but also understands other systems and accounting practices, that's, I think, the perfect blend, because you're not completely biased to one system that's going to be, you have to follow this. This is the Bible. This is all you can do. The customization to make it work for a business, I think, is really important.
Well, and here's the thing. And we kind of went back and forth. I guess we didn't talk about, we kind of a little bit back and forth on it last week. And it was a thing that kind of was really, the thought process was asinine to me, and I just don't understand it. But something, as you mentioned, where you're going to go maybe 1 or 2 or 3, even 3 months possibly without a new sale, especially if you're in like big construction and a lot of your work kind of relies on disposable income.
Yep.
And in that case, and I brought this up last week, the idea is to have a vault account, right? Or sorry, not a vault account. A vault account for your long-term savings is the drip account. Okay. And the idea with a drip account is, for example, let's say seasonality is in your business, and 10 out of the 12 months out of the year is where you make all your money. And then you have 2 months where you don't make any money. So in your scenario, if you use all your money up over those 10 months, you're going to be struggling to pay bills. You're going to, over those 2 months where things are slow. Now, if you developed a drip account, what you would work on with your professional, or if you want to set it up yourself, is you figure out, okay, for example, let's say I make $100,000. Let's for simplicity purposes, let's call it $120,000 in the 10 months. Right. So you average about $12,000 of income, but you need it to last you, right, 12 months. So what you would do is, instead of recognizing that you got $12,000 every single month in those 10 months, you would actually only recognize 10,000. And how you get that is you look at, okay, 120 divided by 12 months means I need it to be, right, 10,000 a month. So the extra 2,000, you fund your drip account for those 10 months. So 10 times 2,000 means month 11, you're going to have $20,000 in there. So now you can take out the 10 and fund your 11th month, and with no sales. Do the same thing with your 12th month. And so that was the thing that was kind of like, you have to set that up. And the conversation we had last week, that I still don't understand it. She was pushing at that contractors would go out there and take a job that loses them money. You remember that? Like she was adamant that this happens, and maybe 1 out of 2 times it might happen where you maybe you take a leading job that is going to possibly lose you money, but it's leading to a bigger project. But to go out and just say, I'm going to bid on this new job, no long-term effect, and I'm gonna underbid so that I lose money out of my pocket. Yeah, that's crazy. I can't believe
it's bad business, right? I mean, it's bad business, and I know there was reasons given for that, but I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, it's just bad business. You can't pour from an empty cup. You can't help anybody with an empty cup. I had a situation today where we were rushing to do a logo design for a client. Got the client, and we're working through a reseller partner with this client, and we'd set a rate with the reseller partner to turn it around in the time frame. Client approved yesterday the design. Today was putting together the 60 files with all the variations and all of the color concepts and all the file types to deliver as a folder. We delivered them at about 4 o'clock. 2 hours later, I get a message back going, "Oh, can we try it with this design? And can we change this letter in there to look like this instead?"
Right.
So a redesign, change of scope. And I'm like, yeah, we can, but it's not going to happen until Monday, and there's going to be an extra fee because we've already done all this work, etc. I let the reseller partner know, and I get a response coming back, whatever you want, but remember, customer is always right. We'll get the money back. And I was like, no, I've got to respond to this. So I sent a response across, and my response, I'll read just a couple of portions of it, was just to clarify our position. We always cover the cost when the mistake is on our side. That's our responsibility, and we stand by that every time.
Right.
But in this case, the design was approved by the client. Our team has already produced all the final assets and file formats based on the approval. The changes are now being requested as substantial rework. And if we absorb the costs for the client initiated changes after the approval, it sets a precedent where the team's time becomes unpaid. And that's simply not sustainable for any business. And I said that, and I'm like, let's, for us, we want to protect everyone involved. And that means we need to create a process that's fair and commercially sound. What she was suggesting was completely uncommercially sound to me. Like, this is a small job. It's probably $150 variation on the scheme of things, but it's enough that I needed to raise it to be a concern. Because what happens if I don't? My team has just done half a day's work they're not getting paid for. I still have to pay my team, so I lose money as a company and a business. There is no way that I would do loss leader work, especially when it comes to tendered projects, because those projects, you should always factor in the unknown. I've got a buddy of mine who he's a retired contracts director. He worked for a lot of big companies, BHP, Rio Tinto, a lot of these big mining firms. And he was the guy in charge of working on checking over the contracts with all of the contractors. And the amount of times he would send the contract, and he worked for the big firm, and he would send them back and go, did you factor in that your guys, every time a new guy comes to site, they have to do a half-day seminar? And you can see the contractor going, what? Yeah, they have to do a safety seminar before they can step site on the site. And if there's been a major incident whilst you're working on the site, they may be required to do an additional couple of hours to get brought up on updated safety protocols. Right. This is a 6-month contract. You need to factor all of this in. How many guys have you got working on this? Oh, about 50. Well, you need to factor in the fact that 50 of these guys are going to be in a training session for half a day. Have you done that? No. Did you factor in weather? No. So all of these different factors. So he basically would give them advice on how they could improve their contract so they come back with something which was fair. Because at the end of the day, he didn't want to enforce a contract with the company, and the company didn't want to accept contracts with contractors that couldn't afford to deliver the results, because it would cost them more to go back to tender to finish the project. So they would make sure it was a fair project and people actually got paid. Now, that's not common practice in the industry. I totally get that. And he may be an exception for doing that. But at the end of the day, he would tell me about how a lot of these contractors would come in and just try to be cheap without actually quoting these jobs out properly and knowing what their real costs were. They hadn't even factored in variance on material supply. They hadn't factored in currency fluctuations for importation of some of the materials and the delays that would be incurred. They hadn't factored in things like storage of materials because they may not be able to get the materials delivered in the time frame they expected. All of these things fall into play. Now, you imagine being a regular contractor and just trying to manage all of that alone, let alone those are almost unknowns that you have to figure out and try and make up. And just, if you get it right, you're covered. If you don't get it right, you might make a little extra money. But to go in intentionally with something that's of a lower cost and just to win the deal, to pay pay your guys a salary, you've still got to pay the vendor. you've still got to pay the guy who's supplying the parts. I mean, what are you doing? Are you running, 30-day terms, 60-day terms, 30-day end of month terms? I mean, because if you are, then that's a whole nother problem again. But cash flow as a contractor, if you're not making money on every single job, why are you doing it?
Yeah, and the reason given was, well, then you just don't care about your employees. And I'm like, if you cared about your employees, you would make sure that you're a profitable business so that they can have a long-term job moving forward. Like, if you always take jobs 100%. That lose money just so that you care for your employees, then you're giving out charity, and then you should be considered a nonprofit. So it was really kind of crazy to me.
Called Habitat, where they just build houses for charity.
Habitat for Humanity is one, but ultimately,
send them off to work for them.
and so it just comes down to really understanding your business to set up a system properly, And as we were kind of recapping just from last week, I really think it was a detailed conversation. It was, I think, eye-opening for some people in terms of where or how they kind of play with words to cover up what actually is occurring in their business. And again, right now, as I said, it's exploding. There's probably some regulation, but I feel like there's obviously got to be more. Just like with payday loans, and this is a relevant sort of comparison, because if you're an individual, it's the same concept. You need money now. You're not going to get paid for another week, so you go to these payday loan places, and they charge you these ridiculous, interest rates, and it's just astronomical, and people get caught up in a loop. And I'm trying to remember exactly where, and I'll have to find this, so don't exactly quote me here, but it was an article that I had seen that said for payday loans, typically an individual who gets into a payday loan takes anywhere from 4 to 8 recurring in order for them to, before they are able to actually get out of that and break that pattern. Or, and I'm sure the default rate is crazy as well on some of these loans. BCAs, MCAs are the same way. They're payday loans for businesses. Now, with payday loans for individuals, a lot of states now have cracked down on the actual interest rate that can be charged. It can't be a 350% APR anymore. Like, so a lot of states max it out at like 30%. And these businesses, they don't operate in those states anymore, or they've significantly reduced their number of locations in these states because they're not profitable. When you see something explode so quickly, it's because it is so profitable for them to continue to grow. So take a minute, take a step back as a business owner and be like, why is it so profitable for these people to do this?
And why are banks and proper financial institutions doing so much due diligence before they allow you to take out the loan? Why do they care if you can actually pay it back in the time frame they're saying? Why are they making sure that you understand what your interest rates are? Because
and what
due diligence.
What it comes down to, right, is that they're claiming that, well, we have to charge these typical rates because a lot of people will default. Well, yeah, but then don't fund them. Don't give them the money, right? Or figure out like a way to make it like actually, feasible. And
wasn't that part of the housing crisis, the jingle mail that was coming back to banks, with the last financial crisis in the US?
In 2008, it was, they were extending all these crazy mortgage loans
that nobody
could afford. They weren't verifying income. They weren't doing any of that. Now, I'll give them that. They at least verified that you have income coming into your bank account.
Yeah. But are we looking at a potential breakdown for small business owners in the grand scheme of things? That could be something similar to that, where lots of small businesses are going to start failing and collapsing because they can't afford to pay these back, because they've all the profits they were making, all the projections they were making for growth didn't happen. Right. Especially if they're getting them if they're getting these loans just to survive, and they're in survival mode as opposed to growth mode, I totally get it. If you're going to be getting one of these loans and your purpose is to win a new contract that's worth 300% margin and you need to buy some new equipment to do it, and you're going to be paying it back, and that 300% margin's reduced down to 200% by the time you pay back everything. I mean, that's still good money, right? That's still good ROI. But we're not talking about that. For a lot of the people who are getting these loans, they don't have that situation. I mean, because those are people that I just described, would be better off going into a normal financial institution. You talk about a situation there. Philippines has a situation right now where those advanced payday loan systems, they're all on cell phone. They're all apps. And I had a employee one time who had about 6 of these loans out on different apps. And he'd listed us as an employer. So our reception was getting all these phone calls about where is he? Does he work for you anymore? And he hadn't been working for us for a few months by that point. And we're like, well, no, he doesn't. We don't have a forwarding address. We don't know where he is.
Right.
We've only got the phone number that you've got, and you've just told us what it is. So that's his number that we've got on file too. Please go chase him yourself. They're cracking down on those things here, is what my understanding is as well, because it's becoming horrific. The regulations are just not there. And I think what you'll see is companies and businesses like these really spike really quickly while the regulations are loose, while there's holes and gaps in the processes from the regulatory portion. And like you said, they're making big money.
So we brought up an example, right? Where you said, let's say you have something that's a 300% ROI, but you need to buy equipment, or maybe you have this good opportunity, right? A new customer, a new client. Think outside the box, right? You can totally ask that client, give them, a discount to prepay a little bit of it, or give them some added value. Don't discount, but give them an added value to prepay to cover your investment. You want to invest in them, they want to invest in you. Everybody wins. You don't have to go out and get a 25, 200%, whatever, factored loan to pay for the equipment. Simply just go to the client, have the conversation. Hey, I want to do this with you. I think this is going to be great for both sides. Here's what I need. We're going to need 25% of the agreement for the first 6 months up front. And here's what we're going to add in top of value for you, right? We're going to give you priority access to our support team. It's free. We typically charge for that, but we'll throw it in for free. And additionally, maybe you give, some added service, maybe one time, over the period. It truly is customizable. And that's the beauty of being a business owner, is that you have the opportunity to think differently, think outside the box. I've actually had this conversation with multiple clients, you know what I mean? And the idea is that, and I've gotten the pushback of, well, I've never heard that done in my industry. Good. Like, be different. Think outside the box. If you want to be status quo, you're just going to be mediocre. But if your goal is to truly grow something and build something that is strong and it meets your dreams and the goals for your life, then sometimes you have to do things a little bit outside the box in order to get, kind of move forward and get ahead. Yep.
And look, and that's it, right? I mean, it gets done we get it thrown down our throats all the time in the online software industry, the SaaS industry. Sign up for 12 months, get a discount, get 2 months free, get 30% off.
Yep.
Sign up for web hosting for your business website. You pay per month, you're going to be paying more. If you pay for a year, you get it cheaper. SSS certificates for your website, same thing. Buy 5 years in advance, pay for 2 years. I mean, a lot of this stuff is very, very normal to do so. And it's just not done in different industries. And when you start looking at it, like you and I had a conversation about something like this about 2 weeks ago, I think it was, where we were talking about, there's different things where think about what is a value proposition for the person you're going to be providing this to, because something that's a value proposition for them might not cost you anything.
Right.
It may be just something you can put in place which doesn't cost you anything, but it has a massive value proposition for them. Like one thing we spoke about was doing some advertising on some equipment which might be getting put on site, which would advertise offer advertising benefit to both parties involved in it. Now, that's thinking outside the box. That is very, very little outlay to do, but the value proposition is very high.
The idea here too, right, is when you think of these things, is what is something that is very low cost to me but has a high value. So in this case, the advertising on the equipment already had to be created. So now all you're doing is just adding a small additional piece to the design that really at large scale is going to cost zero or very little to add that additional sort of piece, whether it's a logo, phone number, etc., name of the partner. So it's very low cost to you, but for them, right, as their business, it's very high value because now they're getting all this other outreach, all this other reach of their name and their phone number that literally they don't have to pay for either, but it's a high value to them because, if they were to do it themselves, it may cost a few $1,000s depending on what it is, So
they couldn't. Well, let's look at it. They couldn't do it themselves because they don't have the same reach. They can't put on. It's not like going and sponsoring a sports team in that scenario we spoke about where you can go and put your sponsorship and get your name on a jersey and then everyone runs around with that jersey, right? Or you get your name on the field. It just doesn't work like that. So, and that's where that particular scenario we spoke about was such a key play, which was really nice. And there's an example of that scenario with taxis. Now, I don't know if they do it there, but here in the Philippines, they sell advertising on taxis. So they'll have these little light boxes on top advertising different products. When I thought that was pretty outrageous when I saw it here until I went to Indonesia. Indonesia, domestic flights, half the domestic flights there, the budget-friendly ones, they sell advertising space inside and outside the airplane. You hop on, and the luggage on the top? There is coffee advertisements all the way along on this one air flight that I was on. I was like, whoa, talk about tacky. Really? And then you look at the headrest. The headrest has another advertisement on it. They were selling advertising on domestic flights to keep the costs down for the consumer. And I thought, what an incredibly brilliant concept. Now, at the time, I thought total tacky. But, we're talking about decent Airbuses. They flew, they landed, didn't have any maintenance problems. I went back and checked to see if there was any issues with the actual crashes or anything with that particular airline. They have a pretty clean history. So it was a genuine marketing campaign that they'd put in place. And then I started to see this more often when you start looking at other transport vehicles, buses, trucks. They sell the space because they're billboards that are getting around and getting people coming in and doing activity. So I think you learn from what other industries are doing in different parts of the world, different parts of the country, and then you see if it's a value add in your area. But definitely look at value add propositions that may not stand out to everybody else, because if it was really obvious, everyone would be doing it, right? And then you wouldn't be able to offer it as a value proposition. But I think you're right. I think you don't have to go out and try and fund everything yourself. If you've got an alternative to offer value, even if it's like labor, for example, or maybe you're a coach and you have a course that you normally charge, $500 for. They sign up for an extended period or put a deposit down, give them a copy of the course for no charge. If it's something that has a very little cost to you other than the initial creation of the course, you may be able to do that, which has a low dollar value, but it can help you today, and the customer sees massive value in it.
Right.
So I do like that suggestion. And this is for me, this just brings me back to that point you made earlier. Doing it yourself, you're not going to be able to brainstorm these ideas. You're not going to be able to hear what's worked for other people. Working with a professional, you actually get the added benefit of hearing concepts, ideas, things that are a little outside the box. And what do they say, Dave? If it doesn't feel uncomfortable when it's first suggested to you, it's probably not it's probably too easy. It's probably not going to work. It should feel a little uncomfortable if it's something.
So something new is always going to feel uncomfortable, and they always say too that your goals, right, your next level of success, it's always on the other side of uncomfortableness, outside of your comfort zone. And the idea is that you just have to realize that when you're doing something like this, for example, talking through a contract that's different, or creating a new idea that's different than your industry standards, is that you're not doing it to be greedy. You're doing it to be an assistant or a help to the business that wants to do business with you. They've already done business with you. You're just asking, hey, can we come up here? This is part of the agreement. In order for us to do this, we need. That's why a lot of service contractors, they take deposits, because what that does is it covers their cost of the first materials to get started. And then essentially they get the next deposit, milestone to cover the next round of materials and salary. Yeah. And what happens is that the last payment you typically give a contractor, that's typically where all the, the profit is then, kind of caught up with from the business on a project. Same thing, if you need to invest, you're giving them the benefit. If you add something on, some value prop as we talked about, it's a win-win for everybody.
Help them help you,
and then in return you help them back. It's a good cycle.
Exactly. I mean, I was always taught that a good deal in life is one where both parties walk away feel like they won. And if you can come up with an arrangement that's good for you and good for them, you're both winning. But if you're walking away and you're stressed how you're going to actually fulfill your portion of it, it's probably not the right deal for you. You haven't negotiated a good enough deal for yourself. You probably haven't added enough value into, what you're doing. And the other good thing about doing a value proposition offer is it means you don't have to undercut your service with the cost. Yeah. You don't have to run which is the easiest thing, dropping your pants and, getting that price down really quickly. And you see it too many times where people say, oh, you know what? You're shopping around. I'll just go and, I'll drop the price by 20%. Will that get the deal done? So you don't want to find yourself in those positions either. So finding ways that you can actually be creative, add extra value. One way we do it from the web design maintenance point of view is we'll include like a bonus handout where we'll create a handout that you can then use for an email marketing campaign or send to your clients when they want to know more about your business. And we'll throw that in on a website. We're already doing the design concept, the branding, content creation. So it's not a huge amount of work to add on, but it has a massive value proposition for the client. The other one we do is we add an extra hour or two to the maintenance agreement. A maintenance agreement for a website, which might have 2 to 4 hours initially, will make it 5 hours or 6 hours. And then we'll encourage the client that they can actually use those hours. Send through some work that you want to get done on the website, articles you want to add to the website, new photos for your gallery, whatever that might look like. New staff, we can add them on. And you're not going to have to pay for those ad hoc. You can get those as part of a package. Now, these are really simple value adds that we're offering, but they work and people really appreciate them. And every business can do it. I mean, you've had I've worked with mobile car detailers before. And one of the simplest thing is adding deodorizer at the end, right? Where it's a very low cost, but it leaves a lasting impression. Or tire shine. We'll give you a free tire shine where they'll put a tire shine on the tires and get them gleaming. And then everyone looks at the car and goes, ooh, you just had your car done. It gets the reaction. It gets people talking about the work that was just done. Every industry has its thing. You are a business owner. You're going to know what that thing is. And you're going to know what gives the biggest impact for the lowest cost to you. And that's going to be your biggest value proposition you can put forward.
Yep. And it's the biggest thing you can think. And so to kind of close this thought process off, right, is don't automatically just assume that you have to take some sort of loan or that you absolutely need to, go to the next biggest thing because you need it in 24 hours. Again,
Ah.
there's sometimes situations where it makes sense. If there's a big enough ROI, et cetera. Like, I get it. Like, there's some, just like in every situation, there's some. But just steer clear. You just, step back for a moment and just think, like, why are these things so, available from everywhere? It's because they're so profitable. And the idea, for that is how are they being profitable? Because they're taking money out of your business. They're taking money out of your future cash flow.
Yeah.
And the idea is like, any loan is going to do it. You're right. Any loan is going to do that. But when they do it at a 200, 300, 400% APR, and they disguise it as what they call cost of funds.
Yeah.
Cost of funds is interest. Like, yeah, you know what I mean? And just because it doesn't, the other thing doesn't compound. Yeah, that's worse. Which means if somebody pays it off, like, you're still paying this ridiculous amount of money when you pay it off in like 60 days or 90 days, and so it makes it even worse when you do that because you're charging them, your money no matter what. You're saying, I'm going to take your money no matter what.
It's a fixed rate. It's a fixed interest rate with a fixed interest value.
Well, not even fixed interest rate. It's a fixed interest.
It's a fixed interest value, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because let's if you fix the interest cost and you pay it back sooner, you actually end up paying a larger interest rate APR, right?
Yeah.
Because then it's like, okay, well, you paid this back in 3 months. What would this, what's that, extrapolated out over a 12-month period, which is what APR is. And I know, when I was listening back to it, I know what she was trying to say. She's like, oh no, it's actually, when you extrapolate it out, it becomes a lower interest rate. And that's not how interest rate works.
No.
Right? Interest rates aren't, okay, well, you paid me 30% in 3 months. So therefore, when you take that 30% and then divide it out over 12, well, then you're only paying like 8% interest, over 12 months. But that's not how how APR is calculated.
No,
it's calculated
basically
on
what they're
your
doing,
time of
right?
repayment and how much interest you paid over that time.
Well, it's the same as like when you look at one of the things I always look at when I do loans for commercial purposes, whether for personal use, etc., is there a penalty for paying out early? Some loans have early payout penalties. They don't want you paying out early.
Right.
And when you work it out, it can be as much as the loan, the interest you're paying on the loan anyway. So you might as well pay it out on the time frame and keep the cash flow up.
But we mentioned that in this episode too, where it's we don't advise to like read your documents and find out, like, is there an early penalty on this? And if it is, like, what is that penalty? Does it, especially if you plan on paying it off early, does that make sense? Or do you look for something else that doesn't have an early pay? And typically a bank loan, a business loan isn't going to have that, requirement, or it's not going to be a large, sum that if there is an early payment penalty, that there's, a large sum. So it's just do your due diligence as a business owner.
Yeah. And look, it could even be worth, like there's like you talk about alternative solutions. You could talk to your bank about just getting a line of credit. There's different ways of dealing with this, especially if you can, a lot of small banks will let you sit down and talk to them and work this out. Right. You might work out that a credit card for some of those purchases, depending on the value, could be suitable as an alternative, and you can manage that a lot easier for yourself. There's so many different ways of dealing with this, and don't rush in and take the first offer because there was a flashy ad on Facebook that you saw in a moment of desperation. And if you get yourself someone who's an advocate for you and your business, someone like Dave is with his customers, and you saw how passionate he was, he's going to give you the advice, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. He's not there to be your friend about it. He's there to give you the truth to make sure you make a more informed decision. Those are the sort of people you want in your corner. You don't want a bunch of yes people giving you vague answers and just saying, yeah, great work, pat on the back, you're doing great. Because you're going to be out of business in 12 months. You're going to be out of business in 6 months because you want someone who's there who's going to coach you and help you and make better decisions in business. So you're there 3, 4, 5, 10 years. You get to the position where you can sell your business and walk away with it, and get a little bit of money in the bank. So, yeah, definitely read the fine print. Don't jump into things. If people are if any form of money loan or lending is offering you quick turnaround, it's because they don't want you to look into the details. It's not for your benefit. It's so that it's for their benefits that you don't look too deeply.
Right. Well, and I think like using that information, and I think the one last thing that I kind of, based on the conversation we're going to bring up on today's episode is we're obviously in December, last month of the year, heading into 2026. Now is the time to kind of focus your attention on where you want to go. Where is your vision? Where are you heading? And it is so easy to be pulled in many different directions as a business owner, especially as a small business owner. You feel like you have to be doing everything and anything that comes up to try and grow. And so use this month to truly narrow your focus, narrow your vision for 2026, and then really only pick one or two things. That's it. We were talking a little bit about this pre-show, Dwarren, that a lot of people, and myself included, I've gotten caught up in this, is it's you get this next shiny, the shiny object syndrome, and something new comes out, you get caught up in it. And then it's like, okay, and now you're off track. And that's why it's so important to have your vision, have your goals set up of what your actual intention is for the month. Like for me, my intention this month is, I'm focusing on client acquisition heading into 2026. And I'm setting up our processes and our system so to bring on support staff and actual in-depth support staff that is going to free up more of my time. And so those are my two goals for December. And essentially anything else I'm not really paying any attention to, so that these two things can happen for the month. And if you don't have those and you don't set those intentions, not even at the beginning of a month, but beginning of a year for sure, and you use those as your guiding light, sure, you can stray off a little bit, but you don't want to get too far away from your main path. Otherwise, you're never going to reach the goals that you set for yourself.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and we look at this in part of the pre-show we're talking about was different software technologies and how it's so hard to keep up with them. It's the same premise that we talk about there. You don't have to be an expert in everything. Just pick a couple, stick with them. Yeah, you may not be the expert, but that's okay. Same goes when you're hiring team members. You don't need to hire a team member that can do everything. Hire people who are good at doing one thing really well that you need done, and just hire a team of people that can do different aspects of what you need. Because they're probably going to do it better than the person who can try and do everything. Because you can have specialists doing individual tasks that are really, and that's a team that helps you grow. That's something that's scalable. And for me, if I was to look at where I'm at, I'm working on creating better SOPs that reduce the questions that I get asked, because I've come to the realization, and it's pretty obvious for most people, but I just came to the realization that if you have people asking questions when they have an SOP, then you haven't finished building the SOP properly.
Right.
And I want to reduce the questions and have SOPs that don't require questions, that can be followed, that can be transferred to other people, and teams can grow with them. So that's my plan. I want to build that out, and I want to build up a small team around me in my core team to have people around them that have support for our core team. We want to build up a support team, an administration team around them to support them, so that we can all scale and grow next year, that we can continue to grow and scale without the dependency on ourselves being the bottlenecks.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's a good point. When people are asking questions, even though you feel like you trained them, you probably didn't give them the right steps in order to complete the goal for your outcome. And I know there's some services out there. The one I see all the time, I think it's Scribe, I think is one that helps you.
Scribe, yeah, great piece of software.
So, and you basically do it one time, and then it documents the entire process for you instead of you having to rethink. So if you walk through and actually do it, it'll follow you and create it into a PDF as well as with the video. So it's one of those things, So to close out the episode is truly for yourself. Hone in on the one or two, max 3 things that you want to accomplish this month that's going to set you up for success going into 2026, right? And then part of that would be setting up your long-term vision for the year, next year, and ensuring that those two things align. And then constantly revisiting those of, okay, where were you at? Where was I at? Where do I want to be? Where am I? Am I too far off the path? Do I need to recenter? Do I need to refocus? Do I need to kind of go back and maybe cancel some of these extra things that I signed up for that are great, but I'm not using them anymore? I had a conversation with my fiance. We were kind of reviewing like subscriptions and things like that. We were and she made the comment. She's like, I wonder how much money you just spend on worthless subscriptions or subscriptions every month. I'm going to guess it's $200 to $300. And I'm like, actually, no, because I have a process for myself where about every quarter I go in and I pull a vendor list from my specific subscription account and look at, okay, what am I paying for right now? And then do I use it? Do I not use it? I just canceled one the other day that was $100 a month. That was like a note taker. It also did some like outreach that I wasn't seeing any results from. And it was supposed to be like on your website, be able to pull people that land on your website. And it was given that there's like no context, nothing going on with that. So I said, it's not worth $100. And so my decision for me was like, let's cancel this and find alternatives. And, recently I've been using a note taker called Granola, which I feel is actually more in depth and better. And it's not only on your phone, on your computer, but it's also on your iPhone, right? And you can do phone calls from it too, where it takes notes from your phone calls as well as in-person meetings too on your phone for a minimal fee. Right now I'm on a free account. If you really want to do that, it just keeps, I think for Granola, you only get like 14 days of meeting history on a free account, but the paid account is like $14 a month. Like it's great. It's very cheap. So the idea of that for yourselves too, is also like, make sure you're reviewing, like, where are you spending your money? Where are my monthly outflows going? And to bring it all for a circle.
Can I add to that?
Go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
If you sign up for one of the special annual deals, especially for Black Friday deals where they pop up with a really incredible deal, make sure you set a calendar reminder 11 months from now, putting a note in that you've purchased this and you need to review that purchase. Because most of those special deals will go to full price billing in 12 months. So
the other way that I've done that too
is you check that.
Is I've actually just canceled it right away. Like if it's something that I'm really like unsure of, right, how much I'm going to get out of, and you can cancel it and it stays active until the billing cycle's over. And so at least then you're not going to get recharged unless you want to be, and then you can kind of go in and reactivate it. But it's something to alleviate even, so some of you could just turn off recurring billing. And so that way, when it comes due, if you're using it all the time and it's something you get in and you're like, oh crap, I got to redo it, you can log back in at that point.
And another thing you can do too, good thing with online American banking, is you can create virtual debit cards. So don't use your main debit card for online purchases. Create a debit card and use it for a quarter. And then that's what you sign up with for the quarter, so that you can then go and block the card if you need to. And then it'll alert you that the billing stopped working for some subscriptions. Then you can make the decision whether it's something you want to continue using or just cancel. That's another way around it as well. So try not to use your primary card, because otherwise you might get hit with some software charges you weren't aware of. Then you have to go through your card vendor to try and get a refund, or deal with the supplier and say, hey, look, I didn't want that to renew. And then you're waiting and you're putting extra effort and time in.
It really depends. Like a lot of times on those, how quickly do you respond to it? Like, if you note it and you go back the same day and say, and reach out. Typically what I've found, if I'm within like 1 or 2 days of the rebilling time, I've been able to get a refund. But when you go 10, 15, 30 days late, they're not going to refund you for that month. You used it, even though, in their aspect, you did. And so that's why it's so important to have a regular review process of your financial statements, bringing it full circle. Why Profit First is so important, because it gives you the insights into not just your cash flow, but it truly gives you your insights into your pricing, your spending, your vendor management, right? Your contact, your offer. Like that's the benefit of working with somebody when you're trying to implement it. But it also gives you those insights if you're just doing it yourself as well. If your operating account is tight, but you figured out your appropriate percentage, well, you're probably losing money or something's being spent out of there that you didn't know. So you get in there and you review it and you say, okay, well, these are all, oh, wait, there's a bill. That's $150 a month. What is that? Oh, I don't use that anymore. Now you can cancel it. but it allows you to have better insights, better oversight over your business finances, and become just a better informed business owner to make better business decisions.
Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
Knowledge is a powerful thing, especially in business. Analytics and all of that sort of wonderful information you can get helps you make better informed decisions. And like my closing note, I want to note that I think one thing that more business owners should try and do this, over this period, the Christmas, New Year's period, as you start to lock in and hone in what you are actually going to focus on, I want you to remember that no is not a bad word. In business, saying no can actually be a very good thing. If you are going to see something that you think might be a good opportunity to get involved with, or maybe you're thinking, look, you know what? I'm going to go and create a whole new product range. Say no initially, and then go and do deeper research and figure out if something you should be focused on. See if it's just something shiny, something shiny that you're going to focus on now. It's like I've heard these people say, I think it's normally like, those mothers who jump online and say, hey, I'm going to save all those mothers out there a whole bunch of money. And one of the things that they say, I see it on YouTube and stuff like that on those little shorts. If you're going to buy something and you think it's an impulse purchase, put it in your cart, then go and check your cart in a month. If you still want to buy it, buy it. If you're like looking at why is that in my cart and you're going to delete it, well, you just saved yourself from buying something you're probably never going to use.
Right.
And this is business. Sometimes we get knee-jerk reactions because we think this is going to be a good idea, or there's a great opportunity because this is on sale, I'm going to grab it. It's just if you're going to do that, it's a whole nother thing you have to implement, productize, learn, get your staff trained up on, market. It may not be the right thing. So sometimes saying no is a very good thing.
I definitely agree with you there. It's something I've fallen into a victim. I don't want to say victim because I don't have a victim mindset, but it's something that I found myself doing very often. Is that it's like, oh, that's cool. Like I need to do that. I know I need to do that for my business. Let me try this. And I think ultimately, it's your vision. Sometimes for myself, you just have to recenter your vision. Right. And we've talked about this on other episodes as well, where it's, your services as well have to be aligned. The Alex Ramosi, the tree analogy, you got to have a good, strong trunk before you start building out your branches. Otherwise, your tree is just going to topple over. Same thing with your vision. You have a good, strong vision that you do 2 or 3 things every single month that build that vision. And then once you build it and you've kind of reach the initial goal of where you want to be in terms of your business-wise revenue, employees, clients, whatever your KPI is with your business, now you can start thinking of, all right, how do I become even bigger than I am now? And each level does require a little bit different thought process, but that 0 to $1 million, it's just all about focus. It's all about consistency. It's all about building your recurring revenue. And the number is always in my mind, $83,333 a month. That's the monthly recurring that you need to do if you want to build a $1 million gross revenue business. But hone your focus in. And to me, I would say my takeaway for today's episode for you guys is one, we definitely appreciate you. I think going into the new year, I'm definitely excited to kind of continue doing these episodes. I think they're more impactful. I love that we've been having some of these, business owners on as well, people who, are in different industries that can give those different insights and education, and we can have good conversations. So what I'm going to say here is if you are a business owner and I know you and maybe you're in a network and you want to possibly come on to a future episode, there's a link in the comments. Please schedule a time, schedule one of the upcoming sessions that you want to join. Let me know what you want to talk about. If I don't know you, I'll reach out. We'll kind of have a quick conversation ahead of time, if I'm not familiar with your business and what you do. But if I do know you, you can totally get in. And then we want you on the show. We want to build 2026, I think is going to be a good year for this show. Our goal with Triumph Business Solutions is to impact 1,000 business owners by the end of 2028. We're there. We're trending in that direction. You know what I mean? And so today, the biggest takeaway is take this month and put yourself in a position to be the best version of yourself heading into 2026 and throughout 2026. And that means literally taking the time to yourself to set yourself up for success. Define your position, define your vision, and define the next steps that you need to do over the next 30, 60, 90, 365 days. By putting it down on paper, by writing it out and building that plan, you then have a document or a ChatGPT, custom GPT, whatever you want, that at any time when you want to do a self-check, you want to look back internally and say, where am I? You have something to refer back to. But if you don't take the time to create that and you want to do a self-check, you have nothing to bounce off. You don't know how far away you are from your goal. You don't know how far away you are from your vision or your tasks that need to be done. So taking
one thing, I love that. I think one thing, if here's a little tip that I've done in the past. If you've got your vision, you've got goals set at certain times, go and create calendar reminders at the beginning of the year for yourself that remind you of what you're expecting to have reached at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So you get an alert pop up on your calendar and be like, oh, yeah, you're right. Did I hit that? And it's a little reality check moment for you.
Well, here's the other thing that you could do too that, again, makes it a lot easier is if you're building this vision out, you use ChatGPT and it helps you kind of build out those milestones that you want to have for yourself. You can then actually have ChatGPT create the calendar reminders for you and then import it into your Microsoft or your Google Calendar instead of you having to go out and do it all the time. And then it will create it. I did it with my fiance's OBGYN appointments. She sent me a screenshot of them. I dropped it in ChatGPT. It said, hey, create me the appointments to put on my calendar for all these. It then created it, sent me the file. Boom. I uploaded it and I was done. And so
Dave was never late for an appointment again.
No.
No more double bookings.
No more double bookings, no more anything. So with that, we're first week of December, which December's going to fly by. We have Christmas, we have New Year's. Like before we know it, it's going to be 2026. I can't believe it's December already. Warren, we started, the beginning of the year, we were, doing another podcast with what was it? What was the name of it? I don't remember. Oh yeah, Shoot the Shit. But we went separate directions, and we're here with this. And the business isn't completely different. Your business, I know, is completely different. If you look back 11 months, and it's just crazy to think how quickly it flies.
Oh, it does.
So
it is crazy.
You can't.
Like for me, like we've got two kids under two little girls under two. So you're going to know what that's all about next year. And
5 teenagers and a baby. It's going to be pretty crazy.
Like suddenly, as soon as you put a baby in the equation, everything starts to fly so much quicker. Everything starts to blur.
Yep.
So it's just, it's a very crazy, crazy year. For me, it's been a year of learning. It's been a year of growing. It's been a year of developing clarity in direction and communication. So I'm really excited for next year. I think it's really promising. And look, I love what you're saying. Like, don't wait until January to start your planning for next year. Just start now.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to wait for a time on the calendar. Just start now. Get it ready.
And that's the biggest thing. Like, that's why, and I'll close with this. It's not a New Year's resolution that you're trying to do. That's why a lot of those fails, because you're like, oh, I'm just going to wait till January 1st and then I'll get started. And then you don't change your habits. You don't change the way you think. In your business, you have to now. Like today is the only day you can control. So if every day you stay consistent, you stay head forward on your mission, right, and your journey, it's going to come true. It's just inevitable.
Yep.
And when you start getting distracted, or you start thinking, oh, it'll just happen, I'll do that tomorrow, that's when you start getting off track. That's what I'm going to leave you guys with. So we appreciate you being here. We love you all. So if you're a business owner and you feel like other people in your network might get 1 or 2 tidbits out of today's episode that you enjoyed, or maybe even some other tidbits, please do all that fun algorithm-y stuff, right? Like, comment, make sure you're subscribed, but also share. Help us reach other people in your network. I feel like we are on a growth trajectory here. We're on a mission trajectory to help people be more successful in their business, whether it's through educating them on different aspects of funding opportunities or strategy or marketing or anything like that, which I think, Dwarren, we should definitely have another episode here soon, on your perspectives on like different marketing and different areas that you're seeing people grow. I know you work, and your perspective is great because you work not only in U.S. focus, but Australian focus, right? And you also work locally in the Philippines. So you have all these different pieces of information that you can provide advice. And if you're listening, you're like, why would I want to know what people are doing in Australia? Because if it's different than here and you stand out from the crowd, that's what matters. That's how things are going to get you seen. So
the trends you can, it's really interesting you should say that. It'd be great to talk about that because trends that work in different locations, very, very different. Even across the US, trends that work in different industries, they work in different techniques. And like we talked about earlier, if you're not feeling a little uncomfortable with your marketing, you're probably not pushing enough boundaries yet, because it's going to feel really uncomfortable initially when you start doing it. But when you start doing it, you'll start seeing big success. And it just takes small incrementals. So I'd love to have that conversation sometime soon. And I'd love to keep having conversations with new people that come onto the podcast too. So if you're one of my contacts on LinkedIn, for example, or you know me, jump in, shoot me a message, and I'll put you in touch with Dave so we can get you on the podcast as well.
Absolutely. I look forward to it. Dwarren, thanks for joining me again, brother. And for those of you watching, I hope you have a wonderful and amazing weekend. Stay safe, and we'll see you in the next one.
Take care. Thanks, Dave.